In this video, we're going to talk about compound interest. Compound interest is what we use when we're mostly talking about money and how money grows when you invest it either in savings accounts or in other types of accounts or investments that you can make. In this example, it says, determine the amount that a $500 investment over 3 years at an annual interest rate of 6.4 is worth for each compounding period, and we have to calculate for a compounding period that is annually, quarterly, monthly, and daily. And this is the formula we're going to use. A means the final amount. P is your initial amount. 1 plus R. R is the interest rate. N is the number of compounding periods in the year. And T is the amount of years. Okay? So, looking at this example, 500, that would be your P. So, let's write that here. P is 500. R, which is your interest rate, that is 6.4%. But we don't want to use this number as a percent. We have to write it as a decimal. And to do that, 6.4% I can write as 6.4 over 100. Which is equal to moving this decimal point over to the left twice. So if I do that, I'll end up with 0.064. And here is your decimal equivalent to 6.4%. So this is what we're going to use for R. N is the amount of periods that we're compounding in a year. So what does that mean? For letter A, since we're compounding annually, that means I'm only going to compound once during that year. So N will be 1. For letter B, I'm compounding quarterly. Quarterly means 4 times a year I will compound the interest. So N will be 4. For letter C, I will compound monthly. That means I will compound interest 12 times a year because there are 12 months in a year, so N is 12. And for letter D, it says compounding daily. So we're going to think about a normal year, which has 365 days. That means I'm going to compound 365 times a year. So for letter D, N will be 365. Okay? So now let's work with letter A. For letter A, let's write our formula. The amount will be equal to P. P, we said, is 500 times 1 plus R. R is 0.064. N for letter A, we said, was 1. So this is 1 times T. Now T, we forgot about T here. Let's add T. T is the time in years. And it says here we're going to invest over 3 years. So T is 3. So this would be 1 times 3. Okay? Now be careful. In your calculator, the first thing you do is you work with your parentheses. You do what's in the parentheses first, and it says 1 plus 0.064, so that will equal 1.064, and then raised to the 1 times 3 power, which is 3. Okay? The next thing you do in your calculator is you take 1.064 and you raise it to the 3rd power. Okay? And that will give you 1.064 raised to the 3rd power is 1.2046. And then this number you multiply by 500. Some calculators, well, I think these days most calculators will have order of operations in them. So you might be able to just write this whole expression, but be very careful where you place your parentheses, when you do your division, make sure the calculator knows you're dividing just this number by that number, not the whole thing inside. It has to be, it's written a certain way for the calculator to do it the way you want it to do it. So I think it's best to go by steps so you don't make mistakes. So if we compound annually at a 6.4 interest rate, and we start with an initial amount of $500, at the end of 3 years, this money will grow to $602.28. That's letter A. For letter B, we do the same thing. A is equal to 500 times 1 plus 0.064. And in this case, we said N for letter B is equal to 4 because we're compounding 4 times a year now. And then we're going to raise this to the 4, that N is also my exponent, times 3 years. Because since I'm compounding 4 times a year, and I'm going to invest this money for 3 years, so each of those 3 years we're compounding 4 times. So we're compounding a total of 12 times in 3 years. So that's why we multiply by 4. And now with your calculator, in this case, before we add these two numbers, I need to divide first, okay? So 0.064 divided by 4, that's going to be 0.016 raised to the 12th power. And that will equal 500 times 1.016 if you add 1, and 0.016 raised to the 12th power. And then now you can raise 1.016 to the 12th power and multiply that by 500, and you will have a final amount of $604.92. Okay? For letter C. For letter C, the final amount will be 500 times 1 plus 0.064. Letter C, we said N would be 12 because we're going to compound interest 12 times during the year because we're going to do it monthly. So if we're going to do it monthly, that's 12 times a year for a total of 3 years. So I'm going to end up compounding 36 times. Okay? So 500 times 1 plus, and remember to divide this amount first, divided by 12. That's 0.0053 raised to the 36th power. Now you add these two numbers. You have 1.0053 to the 36th power, which is 1.0053 raised to the 36th power times 500. $604.80. That's letter C. Now we're going to do letter D. For letter D, I will have that the final amount is equal to 500 times 1 plus 0.064 divided by 365, because now I'm compounding daily. So I would have my exponent 365 times a year times 3 years. So that will equal 500 times 1 plus 0.064 divided by 365 is 0.00018 raised 365 times 3 raised to the 1095th power. You think that's a big number, but this number in here is very small. It's almost 1. So that number is not going to grow too much. So this is 1.00018 raised to the 1095th power. And you will get a total of, you will get times 500, $608.92. And there you have it. For letter A, when you compound annually from 500, you ended up with $602. Compounding quarterly, or 4 times a year, you will get a little bit more money. You'll get $2 more. Compounding monthly, you will get, let me check that answer because it's less. Let me go back. 0.064 divided by 12, and then plus 1, and raised to the 36th power times 500. 605. This should say, let's cross this out, it should say $605.53. Okay, so you get a little bit more money here. And if you compound every single day, it's $608. There you have it. I hope this video helps. I'll see you in the next video.